welcome to the Domestic Roundtable #1 with Marlee Matlin for CODA. Please, I will introduce you. You will ask one question, and then please mute yourself after each question, and no follow-ups. It is 25 minutes. We will get in as many questions as we can. We are going to start the day off with Dean Rogers from the Rogers Review.
Afternoon, Marlee. It's an honor to be talking with you. I read that CODA is the perfect bookend to go with your film debut from many years ago, and I could not agree more. In your humble opinion, what strides are needed to continue to be made in terms of representation of the deaf community on screen, whether it's through film, television, or streaming media?
Great question. Someone asked me just recently about Children of Lesser God, saying that, oh, Children of Lesser God is inappropriate because it's a representation of a deaf character through the voice of a hearing character. And I said, you know what? Children of Lesser God was a product of its time. We're now looking at film and television and streaming media in a completely different way. The stories are being told in a different way. And I wouldn't touch Children of Lesser God from the current lens or from the contemporary perspective. But as far as what needs to be done in terms of representation, we need to make sure that hearing actors don't play deaf actors as if they're a costume to take on and take off at the end of the day. I think we're done with that. We're done with that. We get it. And everyone here seems to agree. Secondly, to make sure that the stories that you're telling are authentic as possible. I know that stories, whether we're talking about whatever media it is, can be approached in different ways, but as long as they are the best way to be told, using deaf actors in a role or actors with a disability, for example. And when there is a deaf actor, for example, on a set, make sure that the set is 100% accessible, whether we're talking about interpreters, whatever it is that creates the equal playing ground for deaf actors. Each one of us has different needs, but we all pretty much have the same need, and that's in terms of communication access. So it's as simple as that. I think we just need further representation in film and television and in streaming media. More deaf writers, more deaf costumers, designers, whatever it may be, in front of and behind the camera.
Next up, we're going to go to David Stark from Watcher Pass.
Hi, Marlee. It's an honor to talk to you. One thing I really enjoyed about this film is seeing the friction that Ruby and your character have as she decides to pursue her dreams. I was wondering if you had similar friction or anxiety when you went off on your own and pursued your dream of acting. Was that something that you drew from personal experience when you were representing the character?
That's a great question too. Wow. I've never been asked that question before. That's great. My parents had always been very supportive growing up. The only thing they couldn't handle was I didn't listen to them when it was time to come home for dinner. What's a curfew, I would say. But in any case, they gave me a lot of independence, which that was their intent. Because when they found out I was deaf at 18 months old, they were initially shocked. It was unexpected. They had never even seen a deaf child before, never experienced deaf culture. They didn't know what to do. So they did their homework. They researched schools. They decided how and where to raise me, which was to be at home, because they wanted to be my parents rather than send me to a school for the deaf, which most deaf people did go to. And they're all great schools. They're all great schools. However, they wanted to keep me at home. And then my parents, I said to them, you know what? I want to be an actor one day. And they said, okay, fine. And they put me in a theater for the deaf, which was very close to us, very close. It was just a few miles from our home. And from 8 to 15, I acted. And then at 15, I got very rebellious. Of course, teenagers being rebellious as they are, I wanted to play around. But I didn't really have a concrete plan about what I wanted to do in my life. All I knew is that it was all about acting. And when Henry Winkler came to visit us at the Center of Deafness, and I said, hi, I'm Marlee, I want to be an actor just like you in Hollywood. He said those exact words. It was Hollywood. Hollywood is what I was talking about. My mom, being a mom who wanted to protect me, said to Henry, don't encourage her too much because the scenario of a deaf actor in Hollywood won't happen. People will dismiss Marlee. And Henry looked at her, turned around, and said to me, Marlee, you can be whatever you want to be as long as you believe in yourself and follow your heart, and your dreams will come true. And 8.5 years later, I was standing on a stage with an Oscar in my hand. So my parents were initially shocked, and they were surprised how far I was able to go in Hollywood, but they were not surprised about my determination because I had it within me. I was very determined, and I made it happen. And there you go.
Thank you.
They were very, very proud of me. Thank you for the question.
Next up, we're going to go to Patrick Gibbs from Slug Magazine.
Thank you very much. Such an honor. I've been a fan for so long, and I've seen this film 3 times now.
Ooh,
It's
wow.
such an emotional film.
I only saw it twice.
I saw it twice just at Sundance. But so we just got done talking to Emilia, and we talked a lot about the heavy emotions of the film and how much I sobbed every time I've seen this movie. But I think it's important to note that
Wait,
I also
one moment. Time out.
Sure.
Time out. Jack is frozen. Hold on. Okay, no, sorry. Okay. Could you repeat? You said something about Emilia, and then could you start from that point again, please?
Of course. We were just speaking to Emilia, and we were focusing a lot on the heavy emotions of the film. And I mean, this movie has made me sob 3 times now, but it's also made me double over laughing. And I think you are hilarious in this film. Everyone is hilarious. Was there a lot of laughter on set? Were you making each other laugh? There's so much of a bond of fun with the Rossi family. Were you cracking each other up?
There was a lot of things that transpired during shooting that made me laugh out loud because it was real life. I mean, if we're talking about what was the story in the film, I think the laughter was as a result because the film was so true to life. It was so authentic in that fashion. All of the little facial expressions or the comments, the body language, everything that the Rossis encompassed. And I was glad that you were able to catch that. That is what excited me, to be able to represent to the audience who we are. And the humor is a very important part of my life. And I can't imagine not having the opportunity to laugh or make fun or, I mean, I get my humor from my dad. And I also draw from my deaf community as well. It comes naturally to us. And Siân Heder, bless her heart, thank you God for Siân Heder, who let us engage in this humor. And it just felt so liberating to me. It just felt so liberating. Whatever made sense for the scene is what we did. The comic timing, some of the scenes, for example, in the doctor's office, the condom scene where we explained about how to put a condom on, we were laughing. I mean, we were laughing offset, and then when we were on camera, we were laughing again, but then we had to keep it all in. I'm so proud that we were able to express this humor within our culture.
Thank you so much.
Next up, we're going to go to Travis Hobson from Punch Drunk Critics. Travis, please unmute. You need to unmute.
Oh, there we go. All right, cool. Thanks again, Marlee, for taking
Marlee said hearing world problems. Not
exactly right. I saw the film at Sundance. It's such a tremendous way to kick off the festival with a movie like this. Made everybody feel great, I think. What does it mean to you to have this film open in such a prominent position? Do you think it'll perhaps open doors for more films about this part of the community getting the kind of exposure that this film is getting, that these kind of films deserve.
It is a validation of the fact that Sundance is probably the best form of validation of a film at their film festival. I mean, it's clear that a film like this featuring deaf actors can be well received by people because these are avid film goers. And of all the film festivals that are out there, these people know what a good movie is all about. And to be able to see and hear us being applauded as we were for our work was probably, it was a great feeling. There were so many feelings going on at once. It was a feeling of relief, the fact that we weren't nervous, but at the same time we were excited to show our film on the big screen about our film and tell our story. And I hope that when the film comes out and the general public has a chance to see the film, that they approach it with an open mind. They have an opportunity to listen and enjoy the ride with us as much as we enjoyed making the film. And I think it'll open a lot of doors, as it should. If not, then I'll just continue to make noise, really.
Next up, we're going to go to Stephen Humphreys from the Christian Science Monitor. Stephen, I'm sorry, you need to unmute. Stephen, you need to unmute. There we go.
Oh, thank you. Sorry. Hello, Marlee.
No worries.
The family
Hi
in
there.
this movie is aware of the difficulties that they face, but they don't see themselves as victims. And I wonder if you could share your thoughts on the importance of the Rossi family not seeing themselves as victims, and what viewers can learn from that example as they face challenges within their own lives.
Yeah, victimhood victims is not part of our vocabulary. I don't think the Rossis, if anything, if you're talking about victims, I would hope, as you said, I honestly don't think that they saw that. You're right. Victims of what? Victims of being deaf? That would be, I think, quite disconcerting. But the Rossis were just a family, a loving family. They were supportive of each other. They're a hardworking family, just trying to make a living, just like any typical family. Who, as you can see in the movie, they just go about their lives. Of course, they depend on their daughter, who is a CODA, as their interpreter. It's just part of who they were. They didn't even think, oh my goodness. There was never any concern except just going about their daily lives until one day Ruby decides that she has a new love, and it happens to be singing and boys. But they're at a loss because they never even thought of music in their household. For her to be involved in music and singing and going off to college certainly catches the Rossis off guard because they're so dependent on her. They don't know how they can proceed without her. But again, there is a life lesson to be learned here, and they go about finding that they don't have to be so dependent on her if they just take the moment to sit and learn about how to get along with life. So it's a similar journey of any family, and I like how the film ended. As a mom of four, I certainly know that my children have their own identities, they have their own dreams, they have their own hopes, their own goals, their desires, and they're all different. And I'm always supportive, my husband and I, of what their dreams are. We may not agree with their choices, but that's okay. That's their choices. And they'll be able to explore, get a taste of life, and decide what's best for themselves. And we're behind them 100%.
Next up, we have Kenneth Moorfield. Sorry. Next up, we have, sorry about that. Next up, we have Kenneth Moorfield from Arts and Faith.
Hi, Marlee. Your character, Jackie Rossi, struck me as, in many ways, one of the least sympathetic characters in the movie and the family. She seems the most afraid. She uses guilt. How did you feel about playing a character that maybe had a few more warts? Was it refreshing or different? Was it a little scary? Or do you even agree with the premise of my question that she's not as sympathetic as some of the other characters?
No, they're specifically, it's a scene where Ruby says to Jackie after breakfast, before she goes off to school, and says, "I've decided that I want to sing." And I look at her and I said, "Well, if we were blind, would you want to be a painter?" And that scene, I had a tough time with shooting it. I really did. Because I had to separate what Marlee would say in a situation like that as opposed to what Jackie would say. I really had to get into Jackie's shoes. But it really struck me because I mean, of course, I disagree with Jackie's words and her approach. That's not what I would say, Marlee. I wanted to actually like take on Jackie and say, Siân, but Siân said, let go. Use your disdain for these comments and use this anger, not anger, but use the disappointment in Jackie and play this with Ruby. And it worked out well. But I don't know. I think it would be difficult for any parent to make a comment like that. I'm not going to diminish Jackie. Jackie just didn't know any better. She just didn't know. She didn't know. And Marlee has frozen. Just a moment. Marlee's frozen.
Okay, let's hold for just a second till maybe she reconnects.
Okay, Marlee's back.
Okay.
Where did we leave off? There was no question. We just, when it was done, it went off.
Okay, we'll move to the next journalist.
No, we answered the question and then it went off. Oh, I wasn't finished with the answer. We finished the answer and then you stopped and then it froze. Oh, I didn't see. Oh, I wasn't finished.
Well, does she want to add more? Should we go to the next question?
No, I was saying that this is a scene that happens in real life to some families, and it's just the way that they handle life. It's their perspective. But I struggled with that scene, but I'm glad that we had an opportunity to do it. It's just different than me, Marlee, is how I'd approach it. Thank you.
You need to unmute. Sister Nancy, can you unmute?
Yes, thank you.
There we go.
I'm here also with Sister Rose, so you can see her too. Both of us are here.
Hi, hi. Hello.
Thank you, Marlee. You're an amazing actress, and I just love this film. I think it's one of the best of 2021 so far. But this is a deeply human film and with so many values. But I wanted to get from you, what do you think is the most the value you hope people go away with from this story?
I love that question. Thank you. I would hope that people who watch the film would take away the fact that, I mean, they might be watching from home, about an appreciation for a different culture, a culture that is rich and has a very, very deep history. It embraces all aspects of humanity that people might not even understand or expect. And when they see a deaf person on the street, consequently, they might think of the film and say, oh, they're no different than us. They just happen to be people who don't hear. I get approached a great deal from people who might know some sign language. They might have learned it in high school, or they might have had a neighbor who was deaf, and they try to communicate with me. And I love that. I love the connection. And I would hope that this movie is just one story of millions of stories out there that have to do with deaf families. and that we should be treated no differently. That, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily that we're all the same too. We're not all raised the same way. We all have different values, different approaches to life, just as anyone would have a different approach to religion. So I think it's just a beautiful family, and I'm so happy to have had the opportunity to play this. I'm losing my train of thought right now because I'm so excited about the movie coming out and thinking about it. You know, there's been a lot of misunderstandings about deaf people, and I think the more people think after seeing a deaf person, after seeing the film, they'll forget that it's not about what we can't do. It's what we're at a loss of. Some people think we can't drive. Some people think we can't have families. Some think we can have, I mean, more can'ts than cans. But I think that it's the opposite, and this film demonstrates that. So there are deaf sisters, there's deaf priests, there's deaf rabbis, there's a lot of people who are deaf who do a lot of things out there. So having the opportunity to use Hollywood as a means to pass along these values, that we can do whatever it is we want to do, and that deaf people can be in front of the camera or behind the camera, is very important to me. So as far, I know that my answer has been long-winded, but I think that this is something that will help people keep an open mind, and that this is just a film about sharing a love for our culture. Simple as that. I need to add, if I could just make a point, my favorite teacher in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, my favorite teacher in elementary school, she became a nun after I left high school. And I'm still very much in touch with her. So seeing you makes me think of her. It makes me very happy.
Well, thank you so much. God bless you. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Coming up next, we have Ed McNulty from Visual Parable.
Hello, Marlee. Thank you for sharing your time with us. And I have loved you ever since I saw Children of a Lesser God years ago. And before that film, the only two I can think of that dealt with deaf people was Johnny Belinda and The Miracle Worker. And I'm wondering, were you, did those films have any impact on you, or were you thinking of them perhaps when you took on that role, or perhaps even this new role? And then I have one other.
Ed, you just muted. You hit your mute button, so we didn't hear the last part of your question.
Sorry about that.
Let me answer the first question.
And actually, Ed,
the first question was, yes, I knew and was familiar with Johnny Belinda, played by the wonderful Jane Wyman, and The Miracle Worker, amazing work of the actors in that film. Again, we have to understand that those parts weren't played authentically. They were hearing actors playing deaf actors, and not to denigrate their work of those brilliant actors. I applaud their work. However, that was then, this is now, and I don't think we could do the same thing today, because deafness is not a costume that a hearing actor can put on and take off at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
There are wonderful actors out there who happen to be deaf, who could play those roles very well. If we're talking about Johnny Belinda and The Miracle Worker. If you're going to Children of Lesser God, people were stunned to see a real deaf actor playing a deaf role. And in other films too, for example, the students in that film were also played by deaf actors. The casting was authentic in this film, in Children of Lesser God. But again, that film was from a hearing perspective, the William Hurt character. Again, not to denigrate that, it's just a movie of its time. So now we're talking today, where we are creating roles, whether television, film, or streaming media. And I trust that they'll tell it from our perspective if they listen to us. And so it's up to you as writers to spread that message.
So it's kind of similar.
You had a second part to your question, you said?
Actually, you know what, Ed, I'm really sorry, but we're not doing two-part questions. You came in after we started, and actually we're at our time at 25 minutes. So
Okay.
we're going to have to call cut, please. And this concludes our roundtable. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. Quick goodbye, and please.